Hello and welcome to FD, where today we're looking at 11 insane transfers which would have changed football if they'd actually happened. Goalkeeper Gianluigi Buffon to Barcelona. Gianluigi Buffon has played Barcelona 7 times in his career, keeping 3 clean sheets and losing to the Blaugrana just twice, though one of those came in the 2015 Champions League final. However, he could have spent nearly 20 years defending the Barca net if the Catalans had succeeded in a move for him in 2001. Then 23, Buffon had conceded under a goal a game and kept 85 clean sheets in 220 matches for Parma, sparking comparisons with Italian legend Dino Zoff. Barca had struggled to find a worthy number 1 since the departure of Zubizarreta 7 years earlier, with Vitor Baia, Ruud Hesp and Sergio Busquets' dad Carlos all having a go, and they reached an agreement with Parma for Buffon, only needing the player's consent. However, Gigi's dad convinced him that he should stay in Italy, where he could help Juve end a 3-year spell which had yielded just 1 trophy, the Intertoto Cup. The old lady spent €52 million on the stopper and immediately returned to the summit of Italian football, conceding only 23 goals in 34 games the following season. Defender Nemanja Vidic to Liverpool. A Man United legend, winning a whopping 15 trophies in 9 seasons with the club, including the Champions League, Nemanja Vidic was a man mountain who personified Alex Ferguson's win-at-all-costs ethos. But he could have ended up representing United's arch-rivals, Liverpool. After helping Spartak Moscow qualify for the Champions League in 2005, Vidic was targeted by Rafa Benitez, who thought that the Serbian could replace the then 32-year-old Sami Hyypiä. Vidic was keen on the move, but concerns over his English language ability led the Anfield hierarchy to plump for Daniel Agger instead, spending £5.8 million on the Dane. But Fergie had no such concerns, calling Vidic at home to convince him to join the Red Devils, and pushing through the £7 million transfer in 48 hours. The big centre-back ended up with a cabinet full of silverware, but if he'd joined Liverpool, at least he would never have to have faced Fernando Torres. Defender Alessandro Costacurta to Spurs. Bar a 30-game spell with Monza as a 20-year-old, Alessandro Costacurta spent his entire brilliant career with AC Milan. Over 2 decades, the defender played 663 times for the club, winning 7 titles and 5 Champions Leagues alongside Baresi and Maldini. But in 1996, when he was 30, the Italian almost joined Tottenham Hotspur, with the Lily Whites hoping he could mentor a promising young centre-back called Sol Campbell. However, Costacurta refused the move. Not because Spurs had finished 8th the previous year, and not because he'd been swapping Desailly and Panucci for Sheringham and Darren Anderton, but because he'd been an Arsenal fan since childhood. Playing for bitter rivals would have been high treason, said the Rossoneri legend. I picked Arsenal and I've never changed my mind. Spurs went on to drop to 10th the following year, while Costacurta played on until the age of 41, becoming the oldest goalscorer in Serie A history with a penalty in his final game. Defender Roberto Carlos to Aston Villa. Best known as a Real Madrid Galactico and one of Brazil's greatest samba stars, Roberto Carlos had a glamorous career at the top of the game. But when he was still at Palmeiras in 1995, the left-back came close to moving to England's glittering Midlands, with Aston Villa and Birmingham both pursuing him. Though just 22, Carlos had already won over 30 caps for the Seleção, and even had a meeting with Aston Villa as he tried to engineer a move to Europe. But in the end, the villains spent £2.5 million on Gareth Southgate, while Carlos moved to Inter Milan for £3 million. Sounds like the more attractive option, until you discover that Inter's manager at the time was Roy Hodgson. Despite scoring a trademark free kick on his debut, Carlos disagreed with Hodgson over his best position, with the coach preferring him on the wing. Tired of his troublemaking, Inter offloaded the Brazilian to Real Madrid, where he made over 500 appearances and won 3 Champions Leagues. Left wing Garrincha to Juventus. Despite Pele's reputation, the legendary striker was never the top scorer at a World Cup. In 1962, he was beaten to the prize by Garrincha, who was also named player of the tournament even though he'd played through a fever in the final. The following year, Juventus made a big play for the 30-year-old wide man, offering Botafogo around $1 million for him, then around 3 times the world record transfer fee. Both they and Real Madrid had attempted to sign him previously, and it was expected that this time the Bianconeri would get their man. Garrincha had scored around 100 goals in 300 league games for Fagoa, but before the move could be completed, he had a rare off day, performing poorly in a tour match against Vojvodina. Juve reduced their offer to $700,000. However, Garrincha had actually played 3 games that week and was carrying a knee injury. Botafogo, knowing his true value, rejected the Italian's revised fee, and the winger played out his career in South America. Midfielder, Michael Essien to Burnley. Nowadays, you have to be able to prove all 4 of your parents were born in the UK if you want to play for Sean Dyche's Brexit Burnley. But back in the late 90s, the Clarets were looking further afield. Michael Essien went to Turf Moor on trial in 1999, having starred in a Ghana side which came 3rd at that year's Under-17 World Cup. Though he impressed the coaches, Burnley at the time had a policy which prevented them paying an apprentice more than £60 a week and couldn't match Essien's wage demands. The next year, the gritty midfielder attended tryouts at Man United, but again he went unsigned, and instead joined Bastia, where he earned his European work permit. By 2005, he had won 2 French titles with Lyon and was voted the best player in Ligue 1, over Franck Ribéry and Eric Abidal. Chelsea ended up paying over £24 million for the Bison, and he played for the club for 9 years, winning another 2 domestic titles and the Champions League. The Blues paid him £90,000 a week, meaning he earned 60 quid roughly every 7 minutes. Midfielder, Michael Laudrup to Liverpool. The great Franz Beckenbauer named him the best player of the 90s. Raul said he was the best he's ever played with, and Iniesta said he was the greatest of all time. Michael Laudrup was a supremely talented playmaking midfielder, who won 4 titles and the European Cup with Barcelona, before switching to Real Madrid, where he won La Liga again. But after impressing at Brøndby in the early 80s, a 19-year-old Laudrup had the opportunity to join Liverpool, a club he'd supported as a child. The Dane was set to sign a 3-year contract, but at the last minute, boss Joe Fagan attempted to change the agreement to a 4-year deal. Laudrup, disappointed with Fagan breaking his word, signed for Juventus instead. It looked like things had worked out for Liverpool at first. They went on to win the League Cup, the League and the European Cup that season, while Laudrup was loaned out to Lazio, suffering relegation in his second campaign in Rome. However, he went on to become an icon in Johan Cruyff's dream team, while Liverpool won their final title in 1990 before slipping into mediocrity. Right wing, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to West Ham. West Ham's favourite pastime seems to be striking out with players who would never be interested in joining them. Michy Batshuayi, Carlos Bacca and Alexandre Lacazette are just 3 of the forwards who have blocked the club's emails over the last few years, but in 2011 they almost got lucky with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. The Irons had seen a £12 million bid for Neymar knocked back 2 years earlier, but Milan looked ready to sell their Gabonese forward, with Robinho, Pato and Ibrahimovic settled in their front line. Tottenham were also after the pace merchant, giving him a tour of White Hart Lane, but neither side firmed up their interest, and Aubameyang went on loan to Ligue 1 instead. He would go on to score 159 goals over the next 6 seasons, an average of 27 a year, whilst his market value, according to Transfermarkt, skyrocketed from under €3 million to over 65 million. No West Ham player has topped 14 league goals in that time. Midfielder, Zinedine Zidane to Blackburn Rovers. With winning goals in World Cup and Champions League finals, Zinedine Zidane is one of the defining players of the modern age. Alongside Michel Platini, he has a good claim to being France's greatest ever footballer, but his genius wasn't always recognised, with it taking him until the age of 24 to move out of his homeland and join a big club. He might never have managed it if Kenny Dalglish had his way. The Scot spotted Zidane in 1995 and wanted to bring him to Blackburn, recently crowned Premier League champions. However, English clubs were suspicious of foreigners at that time, with every Prem side captained by a British player and all but one managed by a British coach, the other being an Irishman. So Blackburn owner Jack Walker dismissed the midfielder, asking Dalglish, "Why would you want to sign Zidane when we have Tim Sherwood?" Newcastle also turned Zizou down a year later, refusing to spend £1.2 million on the League and Player of the Season. Juve got him for £3 million, and Zidane got his place in football history. Forward, Mario Jardel to Rangers. One of Brazil's great forgotten strikers, Mario Jardel was only capped 10 times by the national team, despite boasting a record of 0.78 goals a game throughout his career, a better strike rate than Cristiano Ronaldo. However, he came close to joining Scottish side Rangers on 4 separate occasions between 1996 and 2003. Having won the Copa Libertadores with Gremio at the age of just 22, Jardel was on the hit list of many European clubs, but as a non-EU player, he was unable to obtain a work permit and join the Ibrox outfit. The move was so close that he was pictured in a Gers shirt and even took part in a friendly, but in the end he went on to Porto, where he scored 130 goals in just 125 games over 4 seasons. He won the European Golden Shoe twice while in 6 of the 7 years between 1996 and 2003. The SPL's top goal scorer was a Celtic player. If they had secured Jardel's signature in the 90s, Rangers may well have won a 10th title in a row. Instead, they were unseated by a Henrik Larsson-powered Celtic. Forward, Robert Lewandowski to Blackburn Rovers. The man who brought Fernando Herrero and JJ Okocha to the Premier League, Sam Allardyce has long been a surprisingly forward-thinking manager. The Englishman spent 2 years in charge of Blackburn Rovers between 2008 and 2010, and might well have enjoyed a longer spell at Ewood Park if he'd pulled off the signing of Robert Lewandowski from Lech Poznan. Then 21, Lewa had scored 18 league goals that season, and Allardyce met the striker in Poland, subsequently arranging to fly him over to England for the start treatment. His plane ticket was booked, but the eruption of a volcano in Iceland saw air travel over Europe grinded to a halt, as a huge ash cloud forced the cancellation of over 107,000 flights in an 8-day period. Borussia Dortmund saw their chance and picked Lewandowski up for £5 million. In 7 campaigns in the Bundesliga, the forward has won the title 5 times and racked up over 20 league goals on 5 occasions too. However, Allardyce's legacy at Blackburn still looks impressive, with his acquisitions including Nikola Kalinic and Steven Nzonzi, and Rovers getting relegated within 18 months of his departure. So I hope you guys liked that video. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed that, why not check out the video on screen right now? I'm sure it is great. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.